Hello YouTube, this is Mark from Xeon and Gunpla, and today we are building the Gundam Ez8 from 8th MS Team. Now I decided to go with the Ez8 because I really need another Gundam on the Federation side. I tend to divide my shelf up between Federation and Xeon, and I only have the original RX-78-2 Gundam on the Federation side, and quite a few other high-powered mobile suits on the Xeon side, like the GUF and the Zuda. So I decided to balance things out by adding an Ez8, which is the only other Gundam I have in my backlog, which needed to be built. Of course, the secondary reason I decided to build the Ez8 is because I happen to have a GUF custom waiting in the wings. I still need to put it together, but I mean, how could you not put together such an iconic versus match as the Ez8 versus the GUF custom? I mean, it's Shiro Amada versus Norris Packard. It's right out of the anime. I mean, I may even decide to put maybe do a little diorama of the Ez8 beating the GUF custom with its own severed arm. Also, as far as any Gundam series is concerned, I would have to say that 8th MS Team is my hands down favorite. I mean, it's like Vietnam with giant robots. What's not to like? That's not to say I don't like a lot of space-based mobile suits. One of my personal favorites happens to be the Drossi, which doesn't have any legs to speak of. Also, the Zeong, for one. I mean, even though it was originally designed to have his legs as far as the perfect Zeong goes, the kind of stopgap measure of the Zeong just thrown out there without any legs, which interesting enough to say the least. What was it? I can't remember who the hell what his name was, but it says he doesn't really need legs. The brass just makes us put them on for show. That says a lot about what you really need in order to maneuver in space. Incidentally, if you happen to remember who it was that said that to Char before he launched into Zeong, put it in the comments below so I can remember it for future reference. You'll find that I've changed formats a little bit. In the last video, I did a speed build and just played music over top of it. I figured I'd add commentary this time around, although I did run into a few problems recording commentary while I was building. Well, first of all, it's an hour and a half worth of video, and I kept running out of things to talk about, and you also heard my son and my wife in the background making noise, and a noisy 5-year-old doesn't really lend too well to recording audio. So the best I could do was blank out the audio from the video and speed it up and then dub over about 15 minutes worth of things to talk about in this video. Incidentally, you'll also notice that, seeing as I haven't had that many views yet, you'll notice that I've come up with a new opening and I've added another tool to my arsenal. I've got myself a pair of God hand nippers, and I can't say enough good things about these pair of nippers. I picked mine up for about $40 Canadian, and if you get the chance to get them for cheap, then I would recommend getting them post haste because they're probably one of the better nippers I have. Before that, I actually had a pair of Army Painter nippers from my days of building Warhammer 40k miniatures, and they're good for getting things off of the runners, but as far as making a clean cut between the bit of sprue that's left and the actual piece that you're trying to put together, there is no comparison. So if you get the chance to get some God hand nippers or equivalent, I would definitely recommend it. Now, as for future builds, I was obviously thinking I'm going to have to do that GUF custom in order to match up against the Ez8. I was thinking about doing a few other straight builds. I also have a Char Zaku, a Zaku Kai, Zaku 1 Origins version, a Shin Matsunaka Zaku. Yeah, I have a lot of Zakus. Federation side, I also have a Twin Ball set, a GM Striker, and a Standard GM. Now, mentioned I also have another GUF custom. I also have a Garazulu Angular use. I believe that's the pink one with the big beam machine gun. Now, a buddy of mine suggested that I try and fuse the two and turn it into a Neo Zeon close quarters combat space assault mobile suit, which, as odd as it may seem, might actually look kind of awesome. I mean, the thing has basically a rapid fire machine gun, almost like a Gatling gun, which I always found a little odd. My friend Trevor keeps making fun of me because every time I see a Gatling gun in space, I'm like, this is an area denial weapon. What area are you planning on denying in space? But interestingly enough, we've decided on coming up with a fusion of the two, and we haven't quite come up with a name for it yet. I'm kind of thinking the Gararal because the Guff was more associated with Rambaral or um, well, like Gara Packard or Gara Norris doesn't really make that much sense. If you guys can think of some better names for this sort of fusion of the two mobile suits, put it in the comments below. I'd really like to hear some suggestions. I've also been tinkering with an idea of a ground combat GM heavy weapon system, which incidentally does have a Gatling gun and actually could put it to good use. It's set up almost like a one of those Marine fire support teams. You know, the two-man teams with the 50 caliber machine gun. Only this is one mobile suit with a big Gatling gun, which feeds directly into that huge backpack that would normally hold the other weapons for the GM ground combat type. Only it's completely filled with ammo. Of course, beam saber as a backup, maybe that machine gun as a holdout weapon. I haven't exactly figured out what exactly yet. I mean, I might even give it the beam spray gun just for something to as a holdout weapon that doesn't really require it to worry about its ammo that much. Now, if I were to put together a custom mobile suit for classic Xeon, the Principality of Xeon, there's one I had from a very long time ago. It was actually part of a role-playing game that my buddy Trevor and I had come up with, and this was it was almost similar to the Zaku with the Dom legs that Aina Sahalin was piloting from 8th MS Team in the early parts. Only this one was a bit more refined. There was some actually some custom parts to it. It basically had the Dom hover legs, the uh, Zaku head and body, um, and that Goof Gatling shield. And it might be something worth recreating. I mean, I would, of course, the one big drawback is I also designed it to have the Powered GM's backpack, and when I built my Powered GM, I actually tried to put the backpack on the Zaku, and without some heavy modifications, it's just not going to happen. So I'm thinking I might actually replace it with maybe the R1 or the R2's backpack, which might actually work better. Of course, I'd have to get rid of the beam saber. I'm thinking maybe it's going to be carrying it's probably going to be carrying a Heat Hawk like most other Zaku's. Time will tell. It's one of those things that you kind of have to, experiment with a little bit because the original parts didn't really mesh together. So, and as is, this is going to be at least 3 different Gunpla kits, kit bashed together as far as I can tell. So, I'm expecting this thing to cost somewhere around the area of like at least $60 Canadian, just because I'm averaging it out at like 3 times $20 Canadian per kit. Might be a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on where I find these kits. And of course, any parts I don't use go directly into my parts graveyard, which means I can use them for other little projects later on. Now, one of the main reasons I got back into Gunpla is because my buddy Trevor suggested that maybe, considering what I've done in the past couple of years, I tend to fall off the Gunpla wagon here and there. And lately, he thinks that, I've seen a lot of your miniature work with Warhammer 40k. I've done a lot of painting and miniature work for some of his board games like Last Night on Earth and Star Wars Imperial Assault. I've done some painting for those miniatures. He seems to think that, well, if you're going to do Gunpla, you might as well try and, compete in an actual Gunpla competition. And the only one we really know of is at Anime North in Toronto, convention we've been going to for the better part of a decade, maybe more. Now he seems to think that if I join, that I might actually be able to make the top five. I think I'd probably be able to do the top 10, but we'll see how things go because I've seen some pretty intense competition from what I saw last year. The best I can do is come up with something original, something impressive, and see how things work out. Now, one of the other reasons I decided to get back into Gunpla is not so much because, well, we thought that we could put together a game similar to most tabletop games like 40K or Imperial Assault. And we've seen these sort of games before. We've played some of them. The only problem is with the size of the size of the Gunpla, we would have to play over the course of the entire living room, and a single beam rifle shot could shoot from one end of the living room to the other. I'd say that's probably a good 15, 20 feet, maybe at the most. So we were thinking maybe at some point maybe working some sort of system that's similar to Gundam Build Divers or Gundam Build Fighters, in which it's a small team and you only have so much table space to work with. So obviously you want to be able to use your cover as much as possible. And there's a lot of rules that are still in the works. I mean, I've only come up with a few things here and there. I don't know if anyone's ever interested in this sort of thing. Just drop some comments in the comment section below, and I'd be glad to discuss this sort of thing. I mean, I'm always into some more input and new ideas and stuff like that. So if we can maybe even get some sort of basic system down, I mean, we could actually make this sort of thing work. I mean, maybe at Anime North 2019, we could have some people come by with some Gunpla, maybe form a 3-man team of straight builds, and we can work on something, and maybe we can come up with a different system for custom builds. You never know. We'll have to sit down and actually figure this sort of thing out. Now, one of the other things I'd like to talk about is I'm normally used to doing straight builds. It's what I'm used to. I'm just recently starting to explore doing custom builds. For instance, my gun cannon iron cavalry type, the only thing I've changed is I replaced the Gatling cannon or the anti-personnel Gatling cannon on one side with the beam spray missile, and I've also picked up a set of Jigen build knuckles from Gundam Build Fighters in order to replace those tri-finger claw hands, which I've never really liked. They don't grip any of the weapons. They don't grip any of the weapons properly. I decided to get the knuckles. Basically, they're spare set of hands in order to hold on to the shield better, as well as the machine gun. They also look a lot better. So yeah, other than that, I've never really managed to modify much of one. I mean, I know I mentioned the Garazulu Goof custom kit bash I was planning on doing later on. It does seem rather ambitious, but I'm going to hold off for at least a little while before I get that done. I might actually do the GM heavy weapons systems types because all it is a ground combat GM with a specialized weapon, and maybe I was thinking about grabbing some of the maybe the legs from the GM Striker, or now, my next question to all of you would be that since I'm used to doing straight builds and not so much custom builds, I'm going to need to custom paint a lot of these. Now, I have a lot of dollar store acrylics and Citadel paints and maybe a few pots of Reaper paints. What paints would you recommend for custom painting? I've heard a lot of people use Tamiya paints. And that's all for me tonight. Thanks for watching. This is Mark from CNF Gunpla, and I hope to see you next time. Please subscribe, like, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you very much.